Work first commenced late in 1961 with the arrival of the timber which you saw in the two. That timber was for constructing the keel, is thick, to be joined together with a lap joint. There you see Mr. Williams cutting this lap joint with a niche which is a shipwright's axe. The joint itself measured approximately a square yard. At the same time we also were cutting large telegraph poles which we used to form a framework for a canopy to work under. Once we had got the keel jointed together, we then fitted the stem post, and finally one day we had the help of numerous campers in the campsite to enable us to lift the keel and stem onto the stocks. Now it may be incredible, but that was 7 years ago when this was done. And there you see the keel and its stem on the stocks and being levelled and trued off. Now from there we then start building onto the keel the stern post, and you see us cutting the stern post and the keel with the mortise and tenon housing joint which is used to locate it. This lad is cutting the tenon joint and the stern post. There it is, ready to go together. The keel on the right, the stern post on the left, and now being put into position. All this timber up to now has been Iroka. To get the shape of the yacht, it's necessary for us to put those frames in position along the keel, and this gives us a shape in which we can bend the planks round. This yacht had 14 of these frames altogether to give us the full benefit of the curves. You see the frames being positioned now. That incidentally is our machine shop, a circular saw portable type, and also the usual drills, electric drills such as you saw in the picture. One day the Mayor of Ilford came along to see us. He had heard about the project, and you see Mr. Barnes, the camp warden, showing him a model of the finished yacht and what it would look like. Now there you see the yacht in the background, the frames beginning to take shape. And this work went on winter and summer. These frames were positioned during the winter of 1961. And around the moulds, which were the frames, go longitudinal timbers called ribbons, which we're putting into position now. And the advantage of these are that we bend the ribs into the ribbons. Now when we come to bend timber, all boat yards have a steaming apparatus, so we had to have one as well. And for it we had a 40-gallon drum mounted on a fire brick housing with the furnace below, and the drum regularly filled with water. The steam passed from this drum into a steam box, and the steam box is the timber which we wish to be softened for bending. There's a better view with all the frames in position, and we're at the position now ready to start putting in the ribs. Here's a rib coming out of the steam box, and from here there is 1 minute to get the rib into position. That is, into the yacht with the end in the keel notch and then bent against the ribbons. That's it been knocked into the keel notch, bent into shape. Now this was quite an interesting drill, because to do this we found the best way to do was to get two boys actually to hold onto the ribbons and walk up the plank, pushing it towards the ribbons, with other boys then catching it with G-clamps and pulling it into position. The ribs weren't being completely fixed at this position, they were only being shaped. Later, after they cooled and were rigid, we took them out and treated them with a wood varnish preservative. The total steaming time of a rib in the box is approximately 2 hours. Altogether, there was roughly 98 ribs in the construction of the yacht. We did have a few broken, but I'm quite certain when we got to the 80th rib we were getting good at it. That blue board was our mould loft drawing board in which the yacht was drawn to full size. Now there's the rib coming out after it's cooled and set. That's completely rigid now, and it is going to be treated with this wood varnish preservative, then put back in and fixed permanently. There are the keel notches. That's glue been put into the notches. The rib has been taken over, been positioned back again in the frame. That's in position, and that's Mr. Williams screwing it in now with bronze screws, 3-inch number 14s. Now, to enable us to carry on with the work of the yacht, we did build up a structure on which we could lay a tarpaulin and cover the yacht. This is the second tarpaulin which we have used. And now we have come to the time where we're ready to start planking. Now we have come to the time for the planking. But also here was the first publicity which we had in the local newspaper. Unfortunately, you won't be able to read the script, but I think the headlines will be sufficient to convey to you the size of yacht which we were building. Now, this is the beginning of the planking, and this started about June 1963. The planks are of Iroquois timber, and to get them, I found it necessary to buy a complete tree. The tree was 35 feet long and about 3 foot 6 in diameter. This we had cut at the sawmill into 1 1/8 inch thick boards. The actual tree was ordered the year previously so that it could be cut and left to season. Now there you see us shaping a plank. It's got to be curved both internally and externally to the curves on the yacht ribs so that she fits, and she's also got to be cut longitudinally so that it goes and forms with the curve of the yacht. Generally speaking, it took us an average of not less than 10 hours to cut and fit one plank, and altogether on the yacht there are 48 planks, which necessitated a total of 5,000 copper rivets and rows. Now at one time the television people came along, and this was us actually filmed the television show at home so that we could show it to our friends on the film. You can see from that an average length of a plank. The first 6 planks from the keel up were full length planks. After that they were scarfed normally in 2 sections. G-clamps are used extensively in connection with yacht building. This big chunk of timber here is a clamping device so that we can pull the end of the plank right into the hull with the minimum of strain. Drilling the holes for the copper rivets, and this is the rivets being put in the dolly and held with a sledgehammer and riveted from the inside of the yacht. The planking of the yacht went on from June 1963 until the end of November. You can actually see now the yacht beginning to take shape with the planking almost up to the gunwale. All the rivet holes which were drilled had to be sealed with wooden plugs. Now, in the initial instance, we spoke at the beginning of putting in the temporary frames. Well, this is the day when the temporary frames were to be taken out, since we now had the yacht shaped with the ribs. So we had great fun taking the frames out. You can notice the spaces in the ribs around the hull where the frames have been. Our next job is to fill these in with the necessary ribs. Those frames involved us in the use of roughly 600 feet of wood and 500 nuts and bolts, and it is all just treated now as scrap, but it has served a very good purpose. Once we got the hull up and up to the gunwale, we then got to put in the deck, and here we are positioning the deck beams. Now if you look closely at these deck beams, you'll notice that they're not the usual sort of 4x2 timber cut and shaped at a bandsaw. They're actually laminated, and they've been all glued together on jig forming devices, then positioned and finally set in and bolted through with bronze bolts. Once the deck beams have been positioned, we then have got to true them off with a straight edge and planes. So off we go and do the truing before we can lay the actual deck. Now, in the early day you saw the stern post go into position. Now you see us drilling the stern post to take the stern tube, which will eventually carry the propeller shaft from the engine. And this is us drilling the hole using a homemade boring bar with an adjustable cutter, operated from a heavy Black & Decker drill, aligned through plumber blocks and bearings. Now, to help us to support the deck, we need brackets, and we felt that we wanted something good in the way of brackets, so we made them up with laminations. Here you see them being built in laminations, and a day's work involved just in making one of them, getting them into this jig, all glued, clamped up, and left to set. Clamps again, they're easily a most important part of a shipwright's tools. That's a small heater that we're putting in there, covering it over with some canvas and helping the glue to harden at an even temperature. There is the first part of the deck going down. That's 1/2-inch marine plywood being positioned on some deck bearers and fixed into position with bronze nails. These nails are not ordinary nails, but they're barbed edge nails for better holding. Well, I said earlier on that work continued during winter and summer, so now we're seeing some of the summer periods. Now we're cleaning off the top plank as the gunwale and going to arrange for the gunwale capping to be fitted. Just cutting the portholes in the side of the yacht. Now, a yacht has got to be divided for cabins and other compartments, and this is done by bulkheads, and here we are producing the bulkheads in one of the sheds in the campsite and then taking them on board for final fitting and fixing. Presently seeing the bulkhead being fitted, which is a dividing partition between the skipper's cabin and the main saloon cabin. It's not the finished yacht, it's still the model, the main yacht you'll see in the background. More touring of the upper deck now, ready for the final deck finishing. Now we have the television people back with us again, and it's rather amazing, but normally the kids have a great intention of going about talking and when there's no one there, but when something like this happens and they have a microphone presented to them, there's very little to say. Wonder of wonders. And there's a lot of self-consciousness when a thing like that comes. However, to make up for it, we've now come to the summer of 1965, when the arrival of the engine. This was indeed a great day. We're beginning to see ourselves getting somewhere at last. The engine is a 40 horsepower Parsons, a diesel engine. Now you may have noticed during the whole run of the film the absence of grown-ups, and this is the case. I mean, the kids are putting this engine on board, you see them doing it themselves, and the whole yacht has been constructed from the beginning only by members of the troop, the boys and the scoutmasters. Quite a responsible job putting the engine in position, and we wanted to do this before we had the deck completely sealed off. As I said, when we put down the plywood decking, we were then going to, on top of it, put teak planking, and this is short lengths of teak planking being positioned between two hatch covers. Finishing off, here we are, finishing off the hatch and the companionway into the main cabin. All this timber which you see being used now is teak. Now we bring out the top for the companionway hatch cover. Well, all the jobs go on, and eventually one must keep up to date with painting. So now we find ourselves preparing and painting the interior of the hull. These are the seats in the stern cockpit. You can see how this cover here is tight, and this is us marking it off so that we can ease it and get it working properly. Skylight to the main saloon cabin. There you see us cutting the planks right into the bow. You can see how we take this section out so that we don't have the planks feather edged. And there you have the glue being put onto the deck in which the planks are bedded. Now we've eased all the woodwork on the companionway, and you see how finely it slips into position now. It's just gone along the length of the yacht and come up the forehatch. The fairing off of the hull was a very major job and involved infinite patience, hand planing and finishing off with the boys coming along with reams of sandpaper finally smoothing. This is preparing cotton caulking, which gets put in between the seams of the planks. Very tricky job, an excellent one for the boys to learn. By the time they had finished caulking this hull, they certainly had a lot of learning, because if you consider you have a 40-foot hull with 40 planks, so therefore multiply 40 by 48, and you can see how much caulking we'd had to do. Well, we've now arrived to about 1966, and we feel it was about time we better do some painting of the hull, at least on the upper part. And this is us cutting the water line, and we're going to paint the upper part of the hull. Now you can see the cockpit more fully. The Whitlock Marine Steering Company very kindly presented us with our steering wheel and pedestal, and this is the day when we went down to the company to collect and be presented with the wheel by the directors. They were very good to us. Not only did they supply us with the wheel and pedestal, they also supplied all other fittings, and when we were ready, actually came along and fitted them, operate properly. All wood preparation and painting, which has now been going on for some time. Actually, this is the third coat of paint. Now, this is not launching day. This is a fete day in the campsite, and we decided we would allow the public to visit our yacht and have a look round and let them see what they've been doing. And generally, they were amazed at the work which we have done and the quality of work which has gone into the construction of the yacht. Below decks, and looking through some albums of photographs showing progress from the beginning. Now, every yacht is a keel, and our keel was going to be made of lead, and the finished keel was to weigh 4 tons. Well, this is a lot of lead, and it was going to cost a lot of money, so we did our best in collecting scrap lead, and we finally collected a total of 3 tons of scrap lead for our keel, which we melted down by means of this process, pouring the lead into the hollow of a brick to form an ingot. One ladle filled 1 brick, and each ingot was approximately 4 pounds in weight. Normally we waited until we had about 500 weights of lead, and today we're melting down approximately 500 weights of lead, and that takes a full day to do this job. We finally supplied the foundry who cast our keel with our 3 tons of lead, and they added the extra and cast the keel for us. Well, now you see the bowsprit of the yacht. This is not the normal pole sticking out the front of your yacht. This is a laminated bowsprit, 12 inches wide tapering to 6 inches and flat. Enables the boys to go right out and stand on it without difficulty, and you can see how we're surrounded by a stainless steel pulpit with the anchor winch supported at the end, and you see the anchor chains from it going down into the chain lockers. See the chain lockers down below. We have 2 anchors, 2 sets of chains, each stored in a separate section. You can see the deck there beautifully now, with the planking laid and everything ready for finishing. The varnish work on the teak. looking right aft, you can see our cockpit with the steering wheel now in position. Cleaning down and sanding, revarnishing was going on constantly all the time. Well, here now we've come to this time when we are blowing the yacht counter to take the shaft for the rudder. To do this we use the same boring bar as we did for the stern tube, and again it's guided through the necessary bearings. OT was a most important thing. It might be interesting to know that we reckon we must have consumed during the total construction of the yacht something in the region of 1/4 of a ton of tea. Seems amazing, but it's a very good nourishment and is needed from time to time. That's our workshop which we had in the campsite, and this trailer has actually been used as a temporary store for boat equipment. Now every outside has an inside. I thought perhaps you might like to see the yacht below decks. Well, there you are looking aft. You see the navigator's seat with the navigator's table, that's the black top table. There's a closer view of the seat, and you'll notice how it operates in a cantilever arrangement so that it folds flat against the centerboard casing. The black panel on the wall is actually the yacht. There you see the engine down aft. It's the control panel. And there you have depth recorder. That was presented by Kelvin Hughes, who were very good to us. They also have presented us with our ship-to-shore radio telephone. And the shelf which you see in the background is the one in which all the instruments are eventually positioned. Now we're looking up into the main cabin, and you can see the main cabin seats, which fold up and form bunks when required. You can see the work done on the deck. All that's teak, all varnished. See how it glistens. Forward cabin, the mate's cabin. There you see the knees, the brackets which were made to support the deck. You can see the laminations there, the ones which took us a day to build each one. That's skipper's cabin. And there's up forward into the heads and the boys' wash place. And there's looking aft again. Now we've got the engine lockers in position. That's the grey and red doors with the compartments above. These contain life jackets and sailing suits. There you see the galley, stainless steel sinks. There you see the cabin seats made up as bunks. And the top bunk is wide enough to take 2 and the lower one, so 6 people can sleep in the main cabin. And there is a seat when it's made down as a seat with its cushions. Now the cabin is fitted with a collapsible table, and there you see it with its 2 leaves. That table is large enough to have 10 people sit round it, and is very convenient. Well, so ends the first part of our film. And there you see our yacht. It is swinging the keel into position alongside the yacht. There was a fair amount of work to be done on the keel yet. The whole top surface had to be trued and smoothed off, and it also had to be cut to the accurate length. But at least we have it now alongside the yacht, and we then lose the service of the crane in connection with it. The next thing was work on the keel, and finally the keel was put into position using chain block and tackle. Well, along with the keel at the same time we also had the masts, and we used the crane for the purpose of stepping the masts. And you see the main mast being lifted at the moment and going to be put into position. There's the rigger going up the mast using a boatswain's chair hoisted on the mast winches. And here you have the rigger. Now the rigging is standard wire rigging, but it's plastic coated. And the eyes on the rigging are not spliced eyes, but are stainless steel eyes expanded on. The block which you see in the rigging there is an insulator. We use the rigging as an aerial for the radio. Now here is the rigger, and he was at this method explaining to the boys how to put the eyes on. He felt, it's all right, I'm doing it for you just now, but later on you'll probably find yourself doing something like this, and what you know now is all the better for you later. After the eye was expanded on, a plastic sheath is put over it, and by heat this sheath is shrunk on. It gives the complete rigging absolute protection. Here you have the rigger going up the mast again, and he's actually there at the top of the main mast, which is a height of 50 feet. The mainmast boom is coming aboard now. And here you have Mr. Williams and the rigger discussing various points. Now the rigger felt, being such a beautiful day, there wasn't a breath of wind, and he thought it would be a good idea to use the opportunity out the sails for set. So Skipper had the decks washed down before he would let them have the new sails. And here we are seeing the sails. A storm jib, mizzen, mainsail, number 1 jib, a genoa, and the staysails. And there you see us with a jib, main and mizzen. Now we try out the genoa for size. The sails were all terraline and supplied by Ratsyn Lanthorn of Cowes. Now, I said the keel had work to be done on it. This has it been cut to length. We're using an ordinary two-handed cross-cut saw. Quite a long job, but very efficient. The compound for bedding the keel onto the underside of a yacht. Once the keel was on, this is us digging a hole below the yacht, by which means we can get the centre plate in. And this is us putting the centre plate into position. Work being carried out in the rudder for the rudder fittings. Here you have our electrician, Tony Barber. He's a scoutmaster in the troop. He's done all the electrical work on board the yacht. Little clearance around the propeller. Sparks again. This is the main control panel on the yacht. Handles all electrical circuits, lights, engine starting, heater starting. It took Sparks a full 1800 hours to complete this job, and there's the front of the panel. I'm sorry that wasn't a long enough view. I hope to rectify that later. And here we have a tryout of the engine. Well, no yacht's complete without its name. And this is the weekend before the yacht was transported from Hargreaves Camp to the boatyard in preparation for launching. The person at the present moment putting on the name is Doug Montford, who is the scoutmaster in the troop. Now comes the actual day when all the equipment arrived for loading up the yacht. And here is the crane, which at the moment is being put together by the boys of the troop, which surprised the crane driver. He was absolutely amazed at the way they worked with them and helped them to put the thing together. The crane is going to be used to demast. That's all the purpose of the crane, basically, was to demast. Although we did use it at the same time to load the sailing dinghies onto the bus here. It was convenient, and we decided this was a very good way to do it. The bus belongs to the troop. It's used to transport the boys from the home base to the sailing base, roughly a distance of 35 miles. The bus is used mostly every weekend, taking boys down there. This is just a little sidelight. There's lots of work going on at the yacht at the moment in preparation of lifting it to put it onto the trailer. And to aid us in this, again we are putting down a roadway of sleepers on which the crane is going to go over to demast, and then tractors are going over to help to get the trailer into position and finally pull the yacht from the campsite. crane finally in position. These lads actually have hoisted the chappie up on the mast to put the sling in preparation to take the hook to lift out the mast. Now this is him coming down. You saw it going into position, now you see it going down again. This is very useful for our electrician sparks, because there are still one or two electrical connections to be made to the mast, which he was able to do while it was in this position. Onto tackle and winches, so that we can winch the trailer into position under the yacht. They weren't taking the tractors back onto the soft ground again. There is the trailer actually at the moment moving under the power of the winches. That's it, going under the yacht. It's now, the trailer is now under the yacht, and we're putting chocks and blocks to hold everything in position. The jacks have been completed with. This has then been removed and loaded back onto the small lorry. We're now on the trailer, and here are the lashings holding the yacht in position, keeping everything steady in preparation for the transport. And that's the tractor with its winches operating, and it's pulling the trailer and yacht up towards it. You can see it moving. That's moving under the power of the winch from the tractor. And there we go. That's us leaving the camp onto the side road, leading finally onto the main South End road. This is us starting our 35-mile trip to the boatyard. You can see our bus with the dinghies on top going along the road. You can appreciate part of this was filmed from the car in which we were travelling, although at times we managed to get onto the side of the road and filmed from a static position. So when you see the wagon with the jacks at the back there, one realises how big the yacht is. Beautiful day for the trip. Couldn't have possibly have been better. Everything went off, wasn't a hitch. The boat yard we are going to is Cardinal's at Maylandsea in Essex on the River Blackwater, and the entrance into the boat yard. Here we are in the boat yard road. At this point we had to do a bit of manoeuvring because we had to reverse from there down onto the slipway. onto the slipway. You've got to hand it to those lorry drivers. I wouldn't like to be tussling like that, especially going in reverse at the same time. Now, so it's on position in the slipway, and here we are undoing the lashings, preparing the jacks, lifting the yacht clear of the trailer, and then withdrawing the trailer. And that's it you see going out now. That's the trailer away, and we're sitting on the jacks. We'll then take the yacht down to cradle height and bring in the cradle. So we come to the day of the launching, when we had 500 of our friends, parents, members of the troop, and other well-wishers to see us at our launching. The launching was attended by John Thurman, Camp Chief at Gilwell, who came along and said a few words. Skipper Williams, he had something to say, and Ken Richmond, the troop leader, was responsible for the reading.
They would praise the Lord for his goodness, and for his wonderful works to the children of men. And let them sacrifice the sacrifices of thanksgiving, and declare his works with rejoicing. They that go down to the sea in ships, that do business in great waters, these see the works of the Lord, and his wonders in the depth.
We come to the Lord, you've got above it. If you go down to the one better can library, full service. Stand up.
There you saw the happy and proud head of Derek Williams, Group Scout Leader of the 4th 7 Kings Sea Scout Group, who masterminded the project from the beginning, who fulfilled a dream which the experts said would be impossible. More than 25,000 boy and man hours were poured into the project, and now the group owns a magnificent craft valued at over £20,000. The yacht has been built to Lloyd's 100 A1 classification standards, And no higher compliment could have been paid, and was done on the 12th of January 1970, that in Lloyd's boardroom Mr. Williams was presented with the Yacht of the Year Special Award. Well, now you see us approaching our mooring buoy for the first time and pulling the mooring line on board. Our first visitor on board was Doug Montford, who had been busy ashore on the launching organisation. Well, with all the excitement, Doug and Skipper are now going ashore to the Mail and Sea Yacht Club, where many friends of the group are now having tea. After tea, and on Derek's return to the yacht, the evening turned out rather fine, and he thought this would be an excellent opportunity to hoist sail and have the yacht sailing for the first time. We hoisted jib sail and mizzen, under which we sailed out of the creek. Once in deep water, we then decided to use our mainsail, and so we see our mainsail with our sail number also being hoisted for the first time. What a day of firsts it has been from the beginning. Well, a very happy day and a very pleasant ending to such a happy day.
We